Welcome to episode 219 of Empty the Bench on the Empty the Bench podcast network. He's Tom Albano. I'm Nick Morgasen. Follow us on social media at ETB Sports, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Follow us on the Empty the Bench podcast network at ETB Network, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is over 670 subscribers, heading that direction, closer to 680. Make sure you help us out and subscribe there, youtube.com/ETB Network. Audio platforms as well. We're on everywhere. I don't need to go over the list. We're on every digital audio platform there is. So you can listen to us. Follow our website as well, etbpodcast.com. We do have a blog, which is actually corresponding to a story that we are going to be talking about, which is a massive story that broke. We'll get to that on top of this blog, which one of our guys wrote. We'll get to that as well. Big episode. And again, we jinx everything, and the episode changes.
I mean, the episode was already kind of, I don't want to say loaded, but it had a lot of stories. But now we actually have to cut some stories because of a bigger story, which I think is going to be the one that you're kind of referring to. But before we get to that story, some of the other things that we're going to talk about this episode. An NLRB regional official has ruled Dartmouth men's basketball players are school employees. So we could be seeing somehow the latest steps for a first ever labor union for NCAA athletes. We'll talk about that can of worms. Joel Embiid potentially done for the year. He's done at least for a while, having a procedure done on his meniscus. Tay back in the news again, threatening legal action against the man known as Jack Sweeney, who tracks the jet.
All the private jet flights, including a story we did way back when on Elon Musk.
Correct. Eric Bieniemy out as Commanders' offensive coordinator. And then there's a whole conundrum with that. Supposedly he visited the Chiefs, his old team. And then Kliff Kingsbury is the new OC of the Commanders after first accepting and then rejecting the Raiders offer. The NFL already announcing a scheduling bombshell. The Philadelphia Eagles will be playing in Brazil. First time ever the NFL will play in Brazil. And it'll be during opening weekend on the Friday. So we're going to get Thursday, Friday, Sunday, and Monday football during that opening weekend of 2024. Corbin Burnes, of course, now with the Orioles. The NHL, the players are coming back to the Olympics. Not long after we talked about the Olympics, like a week or two ago. And now the NHL players are going to be officially back starting next Winter Olympics. And MLB and Netflix announcing 2 new series involving the Red Sox. We'll get to all of that. But first, a big story that is beginning to sweep through.
Well, before we do that, because I forgot to do something important as well. Okay. Our episode is presented by WolfSpreads as well, across the network as well. You know the drill by now. 2,000 fantasy dollars every week. I did check, Tom. He did put the Super Bowl game up on WolfSpreads, so we will be able to do our wagering. So, just for example's sake, when we're doing our live stream, we will all be able to place our live wagers. I think it's Niners -2 right now as we speak. And I don't see that fluctuating that much. No. So it'll be somewhere in like the 2 to 3 point range. So I guess we'll all just take 2,000 fantasy dollars this week and just drop it on a bet.
Yeah, I guess. And by the way, actually, never mind. You kind of covered everything that I already wanted to cover.
Yeah, just we're having fun with the WolfSpreads app. They're going to be with us. They just expanded network wide. So we're going to do some fun things even when the football season is over.
Sorry, I forgot. Just looking at the other things that you can place fantasy bets on with WolfSpreads. If you're looking at money lines, the 49ers are a -130, the Chiefs a +110. And then the over-under for the game is going to be 47.5.
You know what, though? It's tough. It's tough to predict a combo because you don't know if the teams are going to... Either the teams come out and they score or they don't. There's no in-between.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, but that's WolfSpreads. We shout out to them. I can't speak today. Shout out to
It's
them.
okay.
Thank you so much, WolfSpreads, for all that you've done with the network. And here's to a great partnership with the rest of the network as with this expansion. All right, now let's talk about the big story at hand. So this is a story that has basically exploded within the last day or so. And as Andrew Marchand says, Nick, everyone wants to cover the sports media. And well, this is a story that it's worth covering the sports media. So one day, I think it was on Tuesday, the I think it's the 5th. No, the 6th, pardon me. Tuesday the 6th. Disney has announced that it is going to be teaming up with Warner Brothers, Discovery, well, the Warner Brothers Discovery, pardon me, and Fox to launch a new sports streaming service, which will come at some point during the second half of 2024. Very next day, Wednesday, the day we're recording this, news comes out. That's why the whole story order is kind of all shaken up. Bob Iger, this very next day, comes out and says ESPN will go to a direct to consumer platform in 2025. Now, he did not completely state that ESPN would be taken off of television services. However, that rumor has been spreading. We have talked about it on previous editions of the show. And in my eyes, this is the beginning of the steps taken towards that, towards actually removing ESPN from cable television and making it just like what you see with ESPN Plus now is ESPN.
Now, I know, and we've talked about this a lot, everyone is obsessed with the streaming networks. Oh, streaming this, streaming that. Excuse me. I don't know if you saw on social media, Mad Dog, who went off on First Take about the Peacock game and going off on Roger Goodell. And his point is valid.
I can only imagine what he said about this.
But his point for a change was actually valid because he's like, the only reason that the game was exclusively on streaming is because NBC Comcast paid $110 million. So they gave an exclusive right. There's no other reason. It's not that they wanted the game to be exclusive. It had nothing to do with streaming. They paid $110 million and they gave them exclusive rights to the game on streaming. Now,
but Nick, you also have to remember something. That playoff game, remember what the number one downloaded app that day was? So
no, I get it. But if you look at and Dog says this in the clip also, the game the next day, which I think was Lions, what was the game? It was Lions Cowboys or no?
Lions Bucks.
I mean, yeah, Lions Bucks had 38 million. It was larger. So the streaming means shit. Like, I get it. Are we heading towards a streaming society? I'm not naive. We're heading towards a more digital streaming society, but we're always going to need TV. Always. You always need the box to watch the games. Like, and this other fictitious rumor that I hear that, oh, well, the NFL is going to want to test streaming only for the Super Bowl in the next 5 years. One, that'll never happen.
No.
Two, you will cut your audience by more than half if you do that.
Well, because, Nick, and this is the thing, maybe I could see more streaming opportunities with, say, the Major League Baseball, the NBA, NHL. NFL, it's very hard to do, and that's because, Nick, not just with football's popularity, but think about with football that you have, I mean, Thursday Night Football obviously is exclusively on Amazon Prime, but your Sunday games, you have CBS, you have Fox, you have NBC, and then you have, for Monday night, you have ABC again. So, in other words, the NFL succeeds because it allows for the most homes. You're not hiding everything behind, not even just a streaming subscription, not hiding it behind cable. Because remember, cable is premium. You gotta pay for that kind of stuff.
Right.
Network television is available for all.
Agreed, but I feel like the NFL tries to cut up the audience 10 million times just for, where is it? Where is the sound effect I'm looking for? That. They're cutting it up for profit. They could get, again, the NFL could give two shits about the fan. They could care less about what the fan thinks. Why do you think they made the deal with Amazon? Because they get $11 billion over 11 years. They don't care.
I mean, that's fair enough.
So And then just to kind of roundabout back to this with the whole Disney, Warner Brothers Discovery and
Hold on.
Fox.
Actually, before you go there, because you're talking about, you're always going to need the box. You're always going to need television. I don't know if that's necessarily true because now you have shows that just release all their episodes in one, then binge watching is I think the point, Nick, is that we're in a really unique place when it comes to, television watching, or just watching of programming in general, because sports, I think, is the last breed of appointment television where you need to be, in front, even if you're not in front of a TV, you need to have your phone by you. You need to have a computer by you so you can watch the game in real time. And if you're not watching the game in real time, at the very least, you have, let's say it's a baseball game, you have MLB.com, that stat tracker uh, up where so in other words, like when it's a certain time, you need to be in a certain place.
Well,
Not a lot of television, not a lot of shows are like that anymore.
well, the one argument I would make for that is that's mostly for like gambling, which has become the bigger prospect of sports. Where if you're gambling, you need your phone, or you need your laptop, or you need your a tablet device because you're
Correct,
following along with the game.
correct. But I do think back to like maybe about a decade or so ago, where if I was home or I sit up and I got to watch a Yankees game that he couldn't, he would tell me, "Do not tell me to score," because he wanted to watch the Yes Network Yankee replay. Nowadays, nowadays, that's kind of moot because with all the services that we have, you're gonna get the updates one way or another. So if you want to see the game with your own eyes, guess what? If that game is 1:05 p.m., you know where your butt is at 1:05 p.m.
Well,
Wherever
on a
it needs to
streaming
be,
device.
on a streaming device or in front of a TV, wherever it needs to be. That's my point. Is that it's only ever with sports at this point where we have the live broadcasting. But I think back, Nick, to just a couple weeks ago, we were talking about the WWE deal with Netflix and how, like, Netflix, what is known for all of its production work, all its programming, which is obviously taped and edited in advance, like any other TV show. But now, Monday Night Raw, or Raw, whenever it's going to be dipping its toes for the first time in live sport programming. And
Well,
now that
you're talking about the Netflix deal, but yeah.
but now my point, now that you see Netflix doing that, now look at these other dominoes that are beginning to fall. Now we've heard about these rumors for some time before the Netflix deal, but my point is now all the dominoes are beginning to fall, and now all the sports platforms are going into
Yeah, but
the streaming
here,
services.
here's the problem with this, okay? So, like I said, Disney, Warner Bros. Discovery, and Fox working together. These are three competitors. This is not adding up. And when I went and I read, and I have the story in front of me, they're calling it a joint venture, first of all. So everyone owns this equally in
Mhm.
some way, shape, or form. And so it says the offering, which is described as a joint venture, split evenly between the three parties, will be available to consumers via a new app. Subscribers will also have the ability to bundle the product with Disney Plus, Hulu, and Max. So, how is this not a monopoly?
Well, here's my Disney Plus, Hulu. So originally I was going to say, now wait a minute, this is just then a whole ESPN thing, but now you're going to add Max into this. I I don't I don't get this. I wouldn't have thought that maybe Disney and Fox, considering that Fox sold to Disney and ESPN all the regional sports networks.
That and the movie business, the 20th century
Right, and
stuff.
the 20th Century Fox studios. But now you're adding Warner Brothers Discovery into this. And look,
Right.
I get it has its platforms. I get it has all its sports channels, but I scratch my head at this, Nick. I'm still trying to make, even when you explain it, I'm still trying to make
Well,
sense of this.
I'll give you. There's a big C word I'm thinking of right now. If you think about in the world of business,
Conglomerate?
collusion. I think there's a little bit of collusion going on here. Now, people are going to say, but Nick, They all agreed to make a deal. Right. But they're taking up, this is what, like 90% of the market share we're talking about here or more? Like the MLB, NBA, NFL, NHL, NASCAR. Like they did a whole list. Everything is going to be on here, which then cheapens the rights deals that these leagues are getting professionally. Think about the. I was talking to you about this before we started. The NBA rights deal is up. If ESPN, Warner Brothers Discovery, and Fox are together, what's the point of negotiating an exclusive rights deal if the app is all going to be together?
So I'm taking, by the way, from Variety.com. With this platform, subscribers would get access to, listen to this, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, SEC Network, ACC Network, ESPN News, ABC, Fox, FS1, FS2, Big Ten Network, TNT, TBS, True TV, and ESPN Plus. And that means they get all the content from MFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, and all the top college divisions.
That's what I was starting to say. That like everything is on here.
Nick, I could realistically cancel my Verizon Fios and just go to this platform.
Thank you. You just made my point. This is literally cable. This is cable.
Nick, what have I said when we've talked about the streaming platforms? What have I said? We're reinventing the wheel. We are reinventing cable.
Also, it says that the service, this is not bad. If this is the price, like for all this stuff, it's not terrible, but it says the service will be priced at or above $40 per month. That's not terrible if you're going to get all those services.
Not terrible, but it says pricing will be announced at a later date. But Variety, I know Wall Street Journal was one of the first on this, but I've taken the Variety article. But here's something that the Variety article points out, Nick. The companies will likely set a monthly subscription that is more than a consumer would pay for a standalone regional sports network, which costs between $20 and $30 a month, and less than a larger digital programming package like a Hulu Plus or a YouTube TV, which costs between $75 and $80. So $40, maybe $50, $60, it would fall around there. But to get all that for between $40 and $60 would be honestly,
it's really not bad. It's not bad.
Incredible. And honestly, it's something that it's talking about, Nick. Because it brings up the regional sports networks. And we've talked about in the past some of the struggles with the regional sports network, including the bankruptcy of Bally's. Would a deal like this basically be the end for RSNs?
Would it be? Probably. Yeah, it probably would be the end of RSNs because, again, regional sports networks are what's in their name. They're regional. And look what happened to what you just said with Bally's, excuse me. And these deals, including Amazon and Max, have killed the regional sports network. You don't need. If you remember back when we were kids, again, I'm going to make us sound old because I just turned 31 this past week. Remember, we had to literally watch the Yes Network to watch a Yankee game, unless it was a national game on Fox or ESPN.
Correct.
You had to go to the Yes Network. That was the only place that they had the game. That was it.
Now you have the Yes app.
Right. Now you have the app. You have digital platforms. There's more than what Amazon. If I remember correctly, over the next couple of years, Amazon is going to have more games than the Yes Network at some point. Like, I think within the next 2 years, they're going to have 100 games on Amazon. Now, I think they own, if I'm not mistaken, a big portion of the Yes Network. So that's why they are doing it that way. So it was Amazon and Fox that both owned a piece of the Yes Network. That's why you were seeing games on Fox as much as well. But
by the way, what you're talking about with the lion's share of the sports platforms, so Disney, Fox, WBD together control about 85% of the U.S. sports right market.
Okay, so I was in the ballpark. But yeah, my point is that 85 to 90% of market share, that's a monopoly. No one is calling this out, that this is a monopoly. Now, this is not officially done. Like, they're saying they agreed, but now you got to get when mergers happen. Remember what happened with Sirius and XM before they were
You got to get all
merged?
the approvals.
You got to get government to approve it.
Mm-hmm.
Because government's going to say, give us our tax money up front. Otherwise, we're not making this deal. Also, you were talking about the launch of ESPN to a flagship a DTC consumer service. I just don't see how that could happen. They're already having cord cutters. We've talked about that in the past with cord cutting with ESPN. So they're going to cut their business even more?
Well, no, I think they're just going to go over to where the cord cutters are going to. But here's my thing about this, Nick. And it's not about the direct-to-consumer ESPN. Obviously, it is a concern, but it's also what Bob Iger made comments about. Like, when you think about it, it makes sense that the direct-to-consumer ESPN platform, where it's just ESPN and not any of these extras with Warner Brother and Fox, obviously the ESPN exclusive platform is going to be cheaper than that one. And then he calls it the fat package. But here's my question. Like, are you kind of just undermining your own announcement? You just had one big announcement, now you're going to have another one, but it's just ESPN. Isn't that kind of trying to cut the legs? Doesn't this cut the legs out of one or the other?
That's kind of like the what's the penalty in the NFL when you hit low?
The chop block?
It's like chop blocking yourself. Like that's the way I see it. But I look at some of the other info that they put in here. Disney has had exploratory talks, now we've talked about this a little bit, with major sports leagues, including the NFL, NBA, and MLB, regarding strategic partnerships. Now, let me put that into English for most people who don't understand. That means the leagues, they're trying to get the leagues to buy a percentage of ESPN. That's what they're trying to do. And everyone poo-pooed it because the NFL and ESPN have talked about it. I think that would be a conflict of interest, by the way, if the NFL bought a percentage of ESPN, because then they would have to treat them better than any other league partner they had. But I don't know. I think this is a bad day for TV, for streaming in general.
I don't know if I can say good or bad. It's definitely a historic day. Definitely a day of just, the landscape of sports media, the landscape of sports business is changing very quickly right before our eyes. And it's absolutely crazy. It's only February and we have a story like this drop. Um, some other information, quickly trying to go through variety story. Disney, Fox, Warner, and WBD would continue to control rights, and the new entity would not create its own content for the service. The startup venture would never compete with its parents for rights deals.
That doesn't make any sense, though, because you're all putting in the same place. You're cheapening the rights deals.
Let's see. The announcement. Oh, yeah. The announcement of new business comes as Disney has been examining strategic alternatives for ESPN, which I think you just hit upon. The new joint venture, currently unnamed, is seen as a way for Disney, Fox, and WBD to gain back some of the lucrative affiliate fees they have lost as their cable subscribers have cut the cord and moved to streaming outlets as their primary source of video entertainment. The new venture would pay its three corporate parents for licensing rights. So that's where it would be. So they would pay ESPN, Fox, and Warner Brothers to license, essentially, to show the games.
But I feel like you're still cutting your legs out because you have to cut it in thirds to share profit.
Each company would own 1/3 of the new outlet and license their sports content to it on a non-exclusive basis. The service would have a new brand and an independent management team. The concept surfaces as traditional media companies are grappling with the migration of sports, the last TV format that generates steady crowds and sustained ratings, to streaming venues.
Well, the one argument you make to that is people say, well, I don't really want to sit in a cold stadium for 4 hours and get snowed and rained on, so I'll sit at home. The companies, these three companies, are taking advantage of that because everyone's saying, I want to sit at the comfort of my own home in front of my big screen TV. I can make whatever food I want. I don't have to pay $15 for that food and that beer.
Yep.
So they're taking advantage of everyone watching games at home because it's too expensive to go to games now. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where this goes. Iger made a mistake announcing the DTC platform. I just
One
don't,
day
I think that's going to be a massive failure, to be honest, because they already have, I think they said 60 to 70% of people cutting the cord on ESPN itself. So now you're just going to make it harder for them to find it?
Well, my problem with it, like I said, I guess I kind of get it because streaming is the future and the future is here. But my problem
Again,
with it,
we're not naive.
wait, my issue with it is you're announcing the DTC one day after this big announcement of the three companies coming together. It makes it like a whimper, basically.
It kind of makes it a little fishy because like they knew they were going to be working with their competitors and then they wanted to announce the side project on top of it. Like
I know,
that
but
didn't make sense.
I like that actually comparison because it seemed like this whole time that the DTC was going to be the main project, and then surprise!
I just don't. These companies hate each other. Like flat out hate each other. They're competitors. Think about it. WBD and ESPN competing for NBA rights between TNT and ESPN, and now you're going to put them on the same platform? How does that make sense?
Well, like I said, Nick, honestly, considering all the content that I watch, I can just cancel my whole TV subscription and just subscribe to that
Well,
platform.
that's the same thing. One last example I'll make is with the NFL content, YouTube TV, which in my opinion has been a massive failure because they can't figure out how to move the boxes around to your own choosing. So people are canceling that and going back to direct TV. I'd rather just watch Red Zone because everything is controlled. But
And Scott Hanson's fun.
well, Scott Hansen will always be the number one. But I don't know. We'll have to see when this actually gets announced, if it gets announced, because mergers are the toughest business in town to get approved.
Right. All right. Moving on to the next big topic, the NLRB. A regional official has ruled that Dartmouth's men's basketball players are school employees. As a result, this could lead to an election for the first ever labor union for NCAA athletes. So, Nick, between the requirements that certain conferences and certain coaches and schools make for their athletes, the NILs, the idea of the big business around colleges, leading to the point where it seems like the Power Five is going to be a Power Three. Well, everything finally caught back up to the NCAA.
So basically, we're basically, and you and I have talked about this for quite a few days. We're affecting the amateurism status now.
I guess NCAA is going to be a full-time job. Which,
what's
to
an
be
amateur,
fair,
though? That's the question.
that's a good question. But let's consider this, Nick. The NCAA athletes, what are they supposed to be?
Well, they're supposed to be students, for number one.
Student athletes.
Well, see, that's the joke you and I made over the years when we've had these issues. Wait a minute. Student athlete. You're supposed to be a student on a scholarship. Maybe not. Now, let me be careful. You don't necessarily finish college because, again, you might go off to be a professional athlete, but that's under 1%.
Right. Like, that's basically 1% of everybody in the world that becomes a professional athlete. But, on one hand, Nick, you have the idea of just, they're supposed to be students. They're supposed to be in the classroom and such, which leads to the whole controversy about talking about NILs and such. At the same time, you have these college coaches, you have these schools, and you have the sports gambling business on them. You have the sports content providers on them, the power conferences, which, considering, Nick, all of that, it makes it feel like for these athletes, sports are more important than an education, which is also wrong.
Right. And that started quite a few years ago with NIL, when that legally got passed, the name, image, likeness.
No, I'd say
No.
10
What I'm
years
saying,
ago.
wait. What I'm saying is that turned it more into a business.
You mean that led to NILs?
Yeah, right. But I'm just saying that led to now everything in this sector. Now that everything is a business, like it's no longer I'm a student who's on a scholarship here to get my degree. Maybe I go off to maybe air quotes being a professional athlete.
Right.
If not,
I mean,
then I can go get a career.
right, but NCAA athletes, Nick, has become a career in itself. Just because, think about this. Back in the day, you didn't have NILs, which meant if you didn't get a scholarship, you had to make it as a walk-on. If you transferred, if you did a transfer, you had to sit out a year. There are cases now where you don't have to do that.
I call the transfer portal the wild, wild west now, because essentially you could go anywhere and you can't be stopped.
Right. You have, if you don't play really any time during freshman year, you can transfer.
That's the sick part here. Like, if you know you have more value than your team, it's like being a free agent or going on the waiver wire in fantasy sports. Oh, I don't like my situation. Waiver wire. Okay, I'm going somewhere else.
Oh, I'm getting more NIL money to go play elsewhere. Waiver wire.
I saw a story, and I don't know. It was a female athlete that she got the first NIL deal with Jordan brands, and she actually got a shoe made for her for the Jordan brand. And I said, wow, we've come a long way when it comes to endorsements and money. And I remember years ago, now the only reason I bring this up is because it's relevant to the situation itself. Remember when Reggie Bush got in trouble after the fact for taking a very small amount of money? Small.
I'm sorry. He should have all of his reinstated. USC should have that championship reinstated.
Especially now with all of these rule changes with the NIL and everything they went through. It's the same thing with the gambling. Like, and again, this might be a take of my own. Like, Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame because of the gambling companies being in bed with Major League Baseball. After all these years, no gambling. You can't do that.
Hey, and I'm just thinking of gambling, Nick, and I just imagine somebody walking up to a college athlete. Like, consider this, the college athlete only being like 18 to 21 years old. And here's some 45-year-old schmuck going up to them. Hey, I know you're a student and all, but you better stick away from the classroom and go into those weight room because we got to prepare. You got to, I'm putting a lot of money on you guys. You can't let me down.
Well, so I have to give them credit on one front. They are still strict on the gambling rules. You can't have a gambling endorsement. You can't have any of that stuff. Because again, that would be a conflict of interest.
No, I understand. And you're right. That is very good. My point was that, again, talking about the treatment of some of these players, you have these fans who are adults. More than like these
you're right.
Kids. And they treat them like absolute garbage if they, mess up their wager.
Yes, you're right. And you can bet the one thing, because I was looking on the DraftKings app, which is the one I use, and you can bet, like when the national championship game, you can bet the combo, the score, the spread, and like the halves. But you're not allowed to bet any props because they're not available. So you can't bet any yards props, any rushing props, any TD props, because again, that's putting pressure on the student athlete. So I guess because you can bet a normal game for a spread because that's not controlled by the game, so to speak.
It's another step in just basically, like you're talking about, what really is an amateur these days.
There isn't. It's gone.
It is kind of gone. And I mean, Nick, even with the Olympics, because I was asking myself, well, what happens with Olympians? But then again, the IOC, right? I was gonna say the IOC allows NBA players to partake in the Olympics, and we'll talk about the NHL, which is now back within the Olympics. So
I want to say one thing though. I just looked this up. So I found the top 5 or 6 NIL valuations going into college.
Okay, what's number one?
Who do you think is number one?
in terms of a brand.
Well, a certain somebody's son is going to be number one in NIL valuation.
NIL valuation. Who?
Bronny James.
Of course.
6.1 valuation. 6.1 million. Million. And he's not even in college yet. Or he just entered college. He's a freshman at USC. So they literally list all the value sectors. They're all social media.
Of course.
That's how they determine NIL valuation. It's not what experience you have. It's not like going on a job interview and saying, I can do this, I can do that. I've done this for this long. They literally list his Instagram followers, 7.7 million. TikTok followers, 5.8 million. Twitter/X, 24,000. Like they list numbers.
And Nick, just one last thing, something that I've talked about and something that means a little more maybe to me than to you, but I'm wondering, so like basically this is, if you're talking about what is an amateur, at this point, it's basically a high school travel CYO kind of athlete. And I'm wondering
anything before college at this point.
But I'm wondering how much longer.
But here's another issue, and I'll track it back to this quickly, which is people were tracking Bronny James like in middle school, if you remember.
I know.
Like, that's pathetic. I'm sorry. Like, you can't determine a college athlete in middle school.
I agree. But my point was going to be, how much longer do we have to wait before this starts to trickle down to the high school level?
Oh, I'm going to say in the next 4 to 5 years, like, amateurism will disappear completely. Like, how can you have amateurism if you're going to keep raising NIL deals and these athletes are allowed to make money?
Yeah, especially because, Nick, the direction that we're going, I could very well see an election happening, and I could very well see a passing ballot just because that's the direction we're heading in.
Think about the other thing because again, talking about money. Do you remember the whole video game dispute?
Yeah.
Which company was that again that was having
EA
that problem?
Sports.
EA Sports. They literally, that was part of the NIL debate because name, image, likeness. Remember, they couldn't use the real names of these athletes.
But now supposedly college football games are coming back.
Right, because the NILs are being paid. Now these athletes are going to get licensing deals based off the game, which is how it should be, by the way.
I was gonna say, because I remember the story, Nick. I forget it was 13 or 14. It might have been 14 because that was the last game, where one of the athletes was talking about saying, at the very least, I would want a copy of the video game, and he didn't get one. I'm like, at least get a copy. Give them a copy of the game that they're in.
I mean, but yeah, like just some similarities of all these names on here. Arch Manning, also part of the Manning family. Livy Dunn, who's more of a social media, but she's considered an athlete. Shadir Sanders, who's been heavily talked about. Who was the other ones? Oh, Caleb Williams.
Of course, Caleb.
Now, he's kind of turned into Eli Manning a little bit when it comes to what team he wants to play for, but that's neither here nor there. All right, let's move on.
Yeah, we got a lot of more stories. We got to quickly go through the next 20 minutes or so, 20, 30 minutes. Joel Embiid having a procedure done on his meniscus. Now, supposedly, he is not going to have a season-ending surgery. It's going to be a procedure, and they're going to take it, one day at a time, 1 week at a time. But this, in my mind, the fact that it's a meniscus in early February does not bode well for him.
And no one's going to admit it. I'm just going to break the news to everybody. His season is over. It's over. Just, can we stop with all the now, let me be clear. Medical treatment and medicine has gotten way better than when we were younger. When you had an injury like this, your season was automatically over when we were younger. Mm-hmm. Now you have all these comprehensive procedures, which are getting people back on the field in 4 to 5 weeks in certain aspects when it comes to certain injuries. But a meniscus is a tough injury. And remember, NBA athlete running up and down the court constantly. If your meniscus is not working, you're screwed. And I hate to say this, but even though Joel Embiid is a great player, He won the MVP last year. Now, according to the rules, he will not win the MVP this year, even though he's having an amazing season numbers standpoint. But because he didn't play 60 games, he can't be the MVP. So, oh
Right.
well.
I mean, he's if his season truly is done, he's not going to hit 65 games anyway. So within the next 2 months, maybe somebody like a Jokic or a Giannis would.
Oh no,
trump him.
Jokic is going to win the MVP. That's it. With Embiid missing the games, even if he came back and played at the end of the year, he's not going to qualify with the games. So
Right.
Jokic is going to run away with this. He's averaging close to a triple-double.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Like
sucks.
that's a thing that's different because like I think of baseball how Otani couldn't pitch by the time August September rolled around, but when you looked at his stats compared to everybody else, it was pretty clear he was going to be the MVP even with a month and a half, 2 months left. When you've got when you've got guys like Giannis and Jokic competing with you, that's a little, Embiid missing the next 2 months, the remaining 2 months of the season or so. That's a little tough to maintain your lead when you're dealing with competition like that. So,
Now, I think it would have been a little different just because I think Jokic would have passed him anyway, even if he came back after 2 months. Say they didn't have this stupid rule. I still think Jokic would have passed him.
well,
Because
that's my
again,
point.
Jokic is healthy. Giannis is not 100% healthy, but he's still on the court and competing.
Right, that's
Yeah.
my point that I'm making. It's kind of hard to do that when you have all that competition around you.
The NBA is probably in the best position it's been in quite a long time when it comes to big men in the sport. They have a lot of stars in the sport. They have more teams competing than ever before. You're not seeing as many dogs. Like in the MLB, you're going to have at least 5 or 6 dogs that you know are not going to compete. Kansas City, Pittsburgh. They're just not going to compete.
Right. Which, I mean, if you were thinking years ago, oh, what's the NBA going to do when LeBron retires? I think this is pretty clear. The NBA is going to be just fine.
The NBA will be fine. Now, everyone thought it was going to be John Moran. I don't think it's going to be him anymore. But
No.
you have plenty of other guys. The Celtics look like a great core to come. The Pacers with Halliburton when he's healthy looks great. You have Donovan Mitchell, who's owning it right now in Cleveland, which everyone thought was a mistake. But I think they're in the top 5.
Yeah.
I think in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah,
I want to look that
they
up.
are.
They're second behind the Celtics. So
And speaking of, I mean, you don't want to wish injury upon anybody, and I certainly don't. And I hope Embiid comes back healthier and such. But if you're a team like the Cavs or you're a team like the Knicks, you're hearing this news. I think you got to be salivating a little bit.
like you're thinking, like, all right, drill bucket. Now, again, I agree with you. No one wishes injury on anybody because that's a horrible thing. But the Sixers are in trouble now because he was the bulk of their scoring. Plain and simple. He did everything. Remember I told you, like, I took an over-under on Embiid. It was like 48.5 or something, which is a big number for points, rebounds, and assists.
And that was the game he dropped 70.
He smashed it. Like, literally smashed it, like, in the third quarter.
Nick, and I don't want to say that nobody else on the Sixers is talented. They have talent, but Embiid is basically, his back is a little hunched because he basically, I guess, is carrying the team. Because he's the leader
his
on
back
that
is
team.
hurting. The back is hurting from carrying that 76ers logo on his back. But I'm looking at their roster quickly just because you were mentioning it. You have plenty of guys. I even like Patrick Beverly, even though he could be a real pain in the ass. But you have guys like Tobias Harris. You have Tyrese Maxey, who, by the way, has come out to be an amazing star in this league and will be for many years. That's why this team sometimes can win without Embiid. Or the other thing that's a misconception, sometimes they're blowing people out by the time the fourth quarter comes, and Embiid doesn't play the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate news, but we'll put a bookmark in this, Tom, because I'm telling you now, his season is over. And when everyone comes back and says that, or when they say, "Oh, his season's not over," we'll come back and look at this moment and say that I looked into the future.
With your crystal ball and all.
Yeah.
All right. I would go into a little Super Bowl talk. Obviously, we're going to do that this coming weekend on the Empty the Bench Network live stream for Super Bowl 58.
Live.
Live with the Football Friday crew and presented by WolfSpreads. 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. on the West Coast. We'll talk about things about, the 49ers practice field. We'll talk about Patrick Mahomes Sr. getting arrested for the DWI. But, Nick, I think the bigger story, fortunately or unfortunately, revolves around one Tay-Tay.
Well, of course, I'm the one who found it by accident when I was looking around.
Will she be there? Won't she be there? We talked about all the rumors that she'll have some sort of jet waiting for her after her Tokyo show.
There's another wrinkle to this as well. Did you hear the rumor that she wants the NFL to pay her expenses to fly to the Super Bowl?
Again, you
Unbelievable.
Opening up Pandora's box.
It'll never happen. The NFL will say,
happen.
F you. Either you come or you don't.
Right. And not just that, Nick, but again, I know this is not the halftime show, but if you do something like pay for this, you're opening that box that everyone's going to go want to get paid for doing stuff for the Super Bowl.
I'll tell you right now, they're not paying for Usher to show up. Usher is getting all the promotion in the world. The number I heard on the radio over the last couple of days, 122 million people watched the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. What do you think the NFL is saying to Usher?
That's your payment, your publicity.
He better have a new album coming out, because that would be kind of a shame if he didn't have like a new album coming out and he was performing.
But I mean, it will be nice to hear some of the classics.
Right. And it'll be interesting. I wonder if there'll be any collabs, because that happens from time to time at these Super Bowl shows. By the way, the last one was epic. Or was that a couple years ago? The one with Snoop and Dre? And
that was a couple of years ago.
I still think that was one of the best, in my opinion, because that was like a classic, like 4 or 5 people. But I don't even... What was last year's Super Bowl halftime show?
Yeah, 2022. That was the one with Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg and Eminem, Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah, that one at 50 Cent.
Yeah, 50 Cent. Last year was Rihanna.
That was not bad. That was, and that was after like a long hiatus of not doing any music.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I don't know if you remember, people made a meme out of the background of her thing. It looked like a giant video game.
Yeah,
behind her. But
which, I mean, again, Nick, just I know we talk about it's the halftime show, and we know sometimes people crap on it, and that the NFL's not being risky or whatever, trying to go with the safest stock possible. But some of these last few Super Bowl halftime shows have been bangers. So I don't mind Usher. Am I Usher's biggest fan? No, but do I like his music? Absolutely. Like I said, he's got some classics from the 2000s in that era I grew up in. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be good. Of course, you're going to get all the clamoring people. Taylor Swift, halftime show. It's not happening. All you delusional people out there. It's not. She's not coming to do the halftime show. She's coming to watch the game. And that's it.
She's going to watch Travis, see if Travis can hoist the Super Bowl trophy, and then we see if Travis drops to the knee like that one prop that says.
I told Tom this, and he got a laugh. I just want to drop like $5 or $10 on that prop bet and see if it actually happens, and be like, "Yes, I got it right," even though I don't care. Oh, it's so stupid. I mean, I can't wait until you put the prop bets, because I saw some out there already. There were Taylor Swift prop bets out there already.
We might have a whole section dedicated to Taylor Swift prop bets.
And ESPN Bet, which is the new platform that which by the way, I don't recommend, and I don't care if I jettison us out of a deal with ESPN Bet, because that platform is terrible, by the way. But they named every bet after a Taylor song. It was horrible.
Of course.
It's cliche.
Well, Nick, we have a blank space where we're talking about the main story behind this. We haven't talked about. So, Jack Sweeney, who runs the X account, or aka the Twitter account, that tracks Taylor Swift's jet. Apparently, Taylor Swift has threatened legal action against Mr. Sweeney for doing such a thing. Now, number one, I would be, as much as I would be a public figure if I'm in Taylor Swift's shoes, I would be a little terrified if somebody was actually tracking my jets.
Well, before we go any further, this name should sound familiar to a lot of people, because Jack Sweeney was the same guy who tracked Elon Musk's plane, private jet, and he wasn't able to stop it. Now, this was before he owned Twitter, by the way. Let's be clear about that. Now, I don't know if Jack were to track Elon Musk's plane now, would there be different circumstances involved?
Yeah, I'd say so.
But I don't know if you can really threaten legal action here. He's not doing anything. You can literally go track any plane on a plane tracker or whatever they have out there.
Even a private jet?
Yeah. You can literally track anything. So I don't know what type of legal action. I'm trying to read the article because I have it here.
But secondly, we know why. We know why she's doing this.
Tension.
Well, the idea of, trying to hold off so that way nobody could. Because imagine, Nick, a betting company. Will Taylor Swift make it to the Super Bowl, before the national anthem, before the end of the first quarter, at halftime?
So Sweeney's accounts fueled a free speech debate in late 2022 when X, formerly Twitter, banned Sweeney for sharing what the platform's owner, Elon Musk, said were his, quote, assassination coordinates. Now, that's a little strong.
Yeah.
But the accounts don't say who travels on the aircraft or where they go once the plane lands. So it's not like he's taking direct private information and saying this is who's on the plane. It's just he knows it's their plane, but he doesn't know who's on there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, heck, do you remember what happened? What was it, a couple of months ago when people were tracking who's the Dodgers pitcher again? They were tracking his plane.
This happened a couple of months.
And they accidentally
Shohei Ohtani's plane, or was it Yamamoto's?
No, it was Yamamoto, and he was heading to Toronto because remember that was the speculation that they were using Toronto. They accidentally tracked Robert Herjavec's plane instead of Yamamoto's plane.
No, wait, I think that was Ohtani.
Was that Ohtani?
Yes, that was Ohtani.
Oh, was he flying to meet with?
Yeah,
Yamamoto?
Ohtani was the one who used Toronto as the bait.
That's right. Okay, but I just remember that whole thing being odd and whatever. But I don't know if she has a legal case here. As long as he's not sharing personal information, then anyone could go search a plane and the coordinates and where it is. So I don't think she has a leg to stand on. Elon Musk didn't.
All right, let's try to quickly go through some of the remaining stories. Eric Bieniemy has been fired as the offensive coordinator of the Commanders. Instead, the Commanders are going to go with Kliff Kingsbury, who, by the way, accepted an offer to join the Raiders coaching staff and then quickly rejected it, rescinded his acceptance to join the Commanders.
What the f-? I mean, yeah, so I saw that deal go down and I see the alert, Kliff Kingsbury, Raiders, and I'm like, all right, that's not bad. He wants to get back in the NFL, whatever. Even though I don't think the Raiders are such a terrible team as everyone makes.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And then
especially they actually listen to what's right and drop the interim tag from Antonio Pierce, and they're going to stick with him. Unlike what they did with Bisaccia years ago to bring in McDaniels.
And I think Antonio Pierce is going to be an amazing coach, regardless. But then all of a sudden, in a weird turn of events, we find out Kliff Kingsbury has decided to not take the job with the Raiders, goes to Washington, takes the offensive coordinator job,
and Bieniemy is out of the job.
And then all of a sudden, you're like, wait a minute. You have two offensive coordinators? Wait, Bieniemy's out after one season? What happened?
Yeah, just complete question mark, because I'm sorry. As much as we talk about how head-scratching of a move it was to go from Kansas City to Washington to take the sidestepping move, the Washington, going from Eric Bieniemy to Kliff Kingsbury. especially because the Commanders have a little bit of controversy surrounding. Apparently, they were trying to go after Ben Johnson, who we just talked about a couple weeks ago,
The
staying with
Lions.
Detroit.
Yeah.
And apparently, Johnson said he did not like the vibe that the new ownership, who I believe it's the 76ers owner, right?
Yeah, it's Josh Harris.
Josh Harris. He did not like the vibe that Josh Harris and company were giving
Well,
off.
he thought it was too NBA focused. That was the quote, that he was more focused on the Sixers and that whole nonsense, which I don't know if that's 100% true, by the way. He could just be making up a reason for why he just didn't want to leave.
Right. But like we said, that's good for the Lions. A little bit damning for the Commanders when they're trying to take off all of the disgustingness from the Dan Snyder reign.
By the way, that's 2 shots at Bieniemy, not just 1.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you about the value of Bieniemy when a couple years ago everyone said, "Oh my God, he's going to be the next head coach somewhere. He's a number 1 offensive coordinator." Now he's out of the job.
And apparently he visited his old friends at the Chiefs during the playoffs.
Yeah, that was weird. Because I kept asking Tom beforehand. I'm like, isn't he technically still under contract? Because they said he went before the AFC Championship, so he was not fired yet.
Correct. But like I told you, I wonder if he knew the writing was on the wall somehow before he was officially fired.
Right, but legally he can't really be checking in on other teams until he's off contract.
I know. Maybe he did that to speed up the process. I don't know.
Maybe, but and Andy Reid already came out and said that he has no space, so we could throw that reckless speculation out the window.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Bieniemy has some skeletons in the closet, like because going all the way back to his college days.
I feel bad because I want him to have a chance, but it's a little tough right now. I don't know where he'd go.
I mean, when you see the weirdness of the NFL head coaching carousel, some of these guys getting hired, when you see Raheem Morris getting hired to be a head coach again, I mean, what do you do?
Listen, Nick, listen to this madness, Nick. In the 2024 season, Raheem Morris is going to have an NFL coaching job, but not NFL head coaching job, rather, but not Eric Bieniemy and not Bill Belichick. And right now, not even Mike Vrabel.
The Vrabel one is interesting because apparently people are saying like it has some attitude issues going along with it, possibly. The other rumor, and I heard Boomer Esiason talk about this down in Radio Row. He said apparently that the Falcons offered him the job and he turned it down.
That's interesting.
And what that tells me is that he didn't get enough power, or I don't think it's money, because I think Belichick has probably made more than enough money in his career. Even though I shouldn't, as you would say to me all the time, don't reach into somebody's pocket. But if that's the case, that's weird. Unless he didn't think the Falcons are able to compete, even though that's the crappiest division, one of the crappier divisions in all of the NFL.
Especially when you have all the young talent like they have.
So, I don't know. I think Bieniemy, and you like to use this phrase a lot, he almost has gotten blackballed a little bit around the NFL.
Yeah, everything just seems kind of weird with the coaching moves that have been happening. Not just Bieniemy, just everything in general.
I mean, do you think he gets a job at some point again? Or do you think like he's just got this weird aura on him right now that no one wants to touch?
I can't tell. I really can't right now.
I guess only time will tell. Is it going to be like, what's his name, who you said with the Raiders that we always clown on, that ends up with a job?
McDaniels, the Whisperer?
Yeah, it's like always like Josh McDaniels always ends up with a job because everyone wants to take a chance on his offensive genius.
Genius.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Quickly, Philadelphia Eagles. They're going to be playing in Brazil. We're going to have the first ever NFL game in Brazil, and it's going to be on the Friday of the opening weekend. Yeah. So it's going to be on the Friday of the opening weekend. There's no information about, who they're going to play or such. I know we're speculating it's probably going to be one of their division rivals.
I think it's going to be the Giants or the Cowboys. I think it's going to be one of them. They're going to go division because they have to get their money's worth. So if they get a good divisional matchup, and they're talking about week 1. So who does Philly either plays the Giants or the Cowboys in week 1?
Right. Well, the joke has always been for the last several years, like half of the last several years have been Giants Cowboys week 1. I mean, Giants Cowboys week 1. But I wonder if that's the case, considering how Cowboys were the number 2 seed, usurping the Eagles with their collapse.
That's what I was thinking.
Had their own collapse. Like, I know we originally went in and said maybe Eagles Giants because they're rival, but I wonder with the Cowboys run they had this season, are they going Eagles Cowboys?
I think they're going to go rematch. I think with those two teams competing all year, imagine what that's going to like Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott in Brazil.
Mm-hmm. But now here's my question: would the Eagles be the home team? Are they the one giving up the home revenue?
Well, I think they would split revenue altogether because it's a neutral site. But
no, because I'm questioning if Jerry is going to be happy about,
I need my money.
I need my money. This game should be in Dallas. This game needs to be in Dallas on a Sunday. Why am I going to that Brazil? I don't care about that Brazil. I only care about my Cowboy.
It's so true, but you know what? The NFL, I'll give the NFL credit on one front. Internationally, they are probably the best marketers out of all professional sports.
Mm-hmm.
They know that they've had a game in how many countries now?
Well, let's see. London has basically been a base for the Jaguars at this point.
Mexico.
They played in Germany. Mexico, I think they're going to go back to Mexico after
they had the field issues. That was the problem.
I think the field was getting renovated. I think they're going to go back now. And now you're going to throw Brazil into the mix.
I'm trying to think where
internationally, they're doing great.
Are they talking about going to France also?
I've heard that as a, in the line. I don't know if they're going to go for the 24 season.
But I heard like maybe the next 2 to 3 years, they might try to go to France. Boy.
But I know
this is not a surprise.
They are increasing the number of international games to 8, I believe. Yeah, they're doubling it to 8, including the Brazil one.
Oh my God, 8 international games! My God.
So the South American regular season game, which would be in Sao Paulo at the Corinthians Arena, they will have 3 games in London and 1 other in Munich. I would assume, since there's like 3 left, I assume a return to Mexico City would be 1. Maybe a France game.
That's what I heard. I've heard reckless speculation that they want to go to France. Now, they have soccer fields in France, so I'm sure that's not an issue. They could find a huge soccer stadium and play a game in there if they really want to.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they haven't gone to Canada.
I could have sworn they did with the Bills once.
But I'm surprised that that's international and it's closest to them.
So maybe they do that again. Maybe they take the Bills up to Canada. Because I remember they played in Canada one time, I think, when the rumors were going around that the Bills might have moved to Toronto.
See, the other rumor I'm curious, well, or not rumor, or speculation I'm making is I'm surprised they haven't moved a team to London yet.
It's probably the logistics of it, the traveling back and forth.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, I don't remember which team played in London, but they had an option to take the week off. One team didn't take the week off.
I don't remember about the option, but I remember the Jags played back-to-back games in
London.
Yeah,
because they chose not to take the week off now. They chose they took it whenever, but they were given the option to say, okay, you're traveling, you can have the week off because you're out of the country.
Right.
So, I don't know. Like, I like some of the international games, but sometimes they're just the time zone differences are a pain in the ass.
Right. And, it's one thing when it's like the game that we did for London where it was Bills Jags. It's another thing when it's Pats versus Colts.
Right. Like that makes total sense.
Like an Eagles Cowboys game, like on Friday in Brazil, I would definitely watch. Obviously, if it's Eagles Giants, I obviously would be watching that.
Right. And that's the weird thing. Like, they're not thinking New York. They're
Mhm.
thinking what teams have the shittiest marketing, and they're throwing them into these international games. Why do you think the Jaguars keep getting a game?
Well, I think it also has to depend upon where they fall within the certain like last season's record with how the NFL makes its schedule, which is a fun trip to read about in itself. By the way, just one little fun fact before we get a little move on. I know some people will say, well, wait a minute, that's a Friday night during the middle of high school football season. And some people will point to the Broadcasting Act of 1961. It's like the second Friday of
After Labor Day.
September. Yeah, till one of the Fridays in December. I think the first or second Friday in December. But here's the thing. Labor Day is early this year.
That's right.
September 2024 starts on Sunday. So Monday the 2nd is Labor Day, which means the NFL season would begin on the 5th. That would be the Thursday night kickoff game. So technically, Friday the 6th is the first Friday. They're not in violation. I
That's
gotta
terrible.
say, that is genius. That is absolute. It's terrible, but it is genius. That
Well,
is getting around. That is legal loopholing by
no,
a
you
major.
know what that is.
Not gonna say that's legal loopholing in one of the most genius way possible. I love it.
I mean, it's great for them. They're making their money, and they're not breaking any laws. Good job, NFL.
Mm-hmm. All right. In other news, quickly, Corbin Burnes. He's now with the Orioles, getting traded there from the Brewers. So, yeah, as Aaron Boone said about the Yankees, that's concerning.
Just that's concerning. That's it, right? Like no other issue,
It's like that's not
nothing
good.
else.
But here's my thing. I forget the agency that does the organization that does all the win projections for
Oh,
the
Fangraphs?
not Fangraphs. It's another one. I gotta double check it, but they had the Orioles only winning like
Oh, you're
88.
talking about over under. Okay.
Hold on one second. Let me double check the news story here. Oh, Dakota, the baseball prospectus.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Okay. How is it that they're projecting the Orioles will only get 87 wins after 100-something win season with talents like, Gunnar Henderson, with talents, the addition of Corbin Burnes, Adley Rutschman? How are they project like a freaking 15 to 20 win loss, like decrease over next season? These guys are not going to regress, not that badly.
No one said the numbers were logical. I was looking at the numbers the other day. The Orioles had a pretty significant drop in win totals. Let me see. Oh, here. So I'm seeing on a lot of them right now 91 or 90 and a half over under.
I would still take that.
I mean, adding Corbin Burnes, that's making them even more dangerous.
Right. No, but like, how can you say they're gonna have that organization? How are you gonna say they're gonna have less than 90 wins? I can't see that.
I don't think you can. And now that the Orioles added a legitimate ace to their rotation, if you
Right.
look at that division, the Yankees have a shit rotation. The Red Sox are a shit team.
I wouldn't say they have a shit rotation, Nick, but I'd say there's a lot of question marks. Marcus Stroman, how is he gonna fare in New York? Carlos Rodon, is he gonna stop blowing the kisses to his haters? And is he actually gonna be healthy and actually be worthy of the number 2 contract that he's on? Cole, can he be consistent? Can he have a repeat Cy Young style performance? I think that it's a matter of question marks, because if healthy and productive, that unit can be phenomenal.
As long as the bullpen's not overused. That's the big
That too.
question.
That
But
too.
I'm looking at the Yankees.
But the bullpen also has some young arms that apparently the Yankees are very high on.
I hope so. I mean, so the Yankees are 93 and a half. The Orioles are either 91 and a half or 90. So they're saying the Yankees are projected to win 1 to 2,
Right.
2 to 3 games more.
But here's my thing, Nick. People are still putting the Blue Jays within that mix of the Yankees and Orioles. I don't know if you can do that.
They're 87 and a half.
Right, but how many times, Nick, have we talked about the Blue Jays just constantly underwhelming and underperforming to the point, like this team with all the talent that they have, they should have gotten to a couple of ALCSs, and they just have not lived up to that.
Ever since Vlad Jr. made that dumb comment in the offseason about how if the Yankees offered him a blank check and he wouldn't go there, which, by the way, is BS to the 10 millionth degree. If the Yankees offered Vlad Jr. a blank check, he would run to the Yankees in a heartbeat. So, I don't know. That must have been karma because they've been a good team, but they have not been able to do anything in the playoffs. Their projected number is 87.5 or 86.5, looking at the books.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the Rays, just to throw that out there, they're saying 84.5 or 85.5 as of now. So they're projecting the Rays to be in fourth. I don't see the Red Sox. Oh, here. The Red Sox are 79.5 or 80.5. So basically projecting them to finish 500.
This is, I'm sorry, the Red Sox?
Yeah. So
I could see it. They're in the midst of basically trying to rebuild.
drought.
Yeah, and a drought. All right.
It's a good move, though.
Quickly, NHL back in the Olympics. After what we talked about a week or two ago, the NHL players, the NHL League, and the Olympic Committee have agreed 2026, they're going to be back. So 2030, they'll also be a part of. From there, still to be determined. So I guess 2026 and 2030, once again, like in years past, they won't do an all-star weekend. Instead, they'll take the 2 weeks off for the players to partake in the Olympics. Honestly, I get it that sometimes the interruption can kind of be a disruption to the NHL season. It can be a little bit bothersome, but you know what? And again, talking about amateurism, bringing in the professionals, but it is still the greatest athletes competing on one of the greatest global stages of sports. You talk about you mentioned it before, Nick. I think we weren't recording. I think we were in a meeting or stuff. Basketball, and I would throw hockey alongside it, are the international sports.
Yeah, you have way more international flavor probably in hockey and in the NBA. And the big joke is there's more international players in the NBA than there are from the States. You can probably say the same thing about the NHL. There's probably more French and Canadian players than there are from the US.
And European, Russian.
And European, Russian. You're right. And I think there's just way more. And I think that just shows the growth of the sport that more international athletes are making it pro. So
I love it, by the way, Nick. Talk about NFL and its international stage going well, NBA, NHL. Oh, hi, MLB.
yeah, I know. It's unfortunate.
There you go. We're not even in baseball season. We're not even in preseason yet. Pitchers and catchers haven't reported yet, but they will next week.
Valentine's Day.
Speaking of, one last story. The MLB and Netflix have agreed to 2 series with the Red Sox. One is a multi-part documentary series looking back at the 2004 season. Kind of unsurprising, but I feel like this topic has been done to death. I'm not going to watch it for obvious reasons. Obvious, painful trigger memory reasons.
Well,
but
yeah.
The other one is going to be a docu-series where it's going to be Hard Knocks style. They're going to follow around the Red Sox for 2024, get locker room access and everything.
Who cares? I don't care. I don't watch Hard Knocks. I don't watch the end of because it's just a bunch of stupid quotes. You didn't
watch any of Hard Knocks last year, even though it had
RELAX.
I didn't have to watch it. I literally went on Twitter and they would post the clips. I didn't have to watch it.
Fair enough.
So I feel like MLB is going to be boring. Like, because you're in a clubhouse, you work out, you're working on the field. It's not like the NFL, like where you follow them all around where they go. Like, I don't know. MLB is boring. I don't know. Like, am I wrong? Tell me.
Nick, I mean, I'm a baseball lover, so I don't know. Maybe I tune in for it. But look who's running the league. This is a guy who called Mike Trout boring. No, Rob, you're boring. You're the one.
On crack.
I was gonna say something else, and then Stephen A decided to fill in for me. So you know what? Good enough.
Perfect timing.
I think that's a good end point. We can end the show there.
But before we go, you mentioned, well, okay, we'll do that first. Empty the Bench Network live stream, our last Football Friday, which is really a Football Saturday, our
Right.
Super Bowl 58 live stream. We do this every year, the last one live, because it's the most accurate, up to date, right the day before. Usually the point spread really doesn't change too much between the day before and right up to it. We'll give you everything. We'll give you prop bets, which is my favorite time of the year.
Right.
Just be prepared. There's going to be a lot of Taylor Swift prop bets, not by choice.
Like I said, she may get her own section.
Yeah. But my favorite props are the ones where they do multi-sport crossing. Those are my favorite. Just watching these random like connections like the NHL and NFL, like such and such scores 2 goals and a touchdown from Travis Kelce. Like, I don't know how they figure these things out, but we'll do the game. We'll do the prop bets. We'll go over some of the stuff. Patrick Mahomes Sr. obviously being arrested for the 3rd time for DWI, and could be serving 2 to 10 for his 3rd offense. So we'll get into all that stuff. So make sure you tune in Saturday live, not taped. We've been taped all year, but live, presented by WolfSpreads. We will do our wagers because I did check on the app. It is available. So I didn't know if it was. I agreed with you, but I didn't know if they were going to put one game up there because that's just like click. All right, 2,000 fantasy dollars. By the way, we all had a bad week this past week. We were all minus 1,500
because there was no game last week.
No, I meant the last time we did the competition. We all were bad.
Nick, because I renewed for the previous week because I was curious. Are they just going to go to the next game? And they didn't. So,
is that what that was?
Yes.
Oh, I thought that was from leftover.
No, that was from literal last week when there was no games.
I did have a bad couple weeks.
And before anybody says anything, shut up. The Pro Bowl don't count.
Yeah, fuck Pro Bowl. Yes, I meant that quite literally. But yeah, I had a bad couple weeks on the app. Yeah. So, I mean, I did well on normal bets, but
so when we calculate the final WolfSpread standings, we'll just have to add 1,500 to everybody's score.
Probably. Yeah, that was brutal. But also coming back, actually, this show is going to air on Valentine's Day next week. I just realized.
No, we're taping on Valentine's Day.
Oh, are we taping on Valentine's Day?
Taping.
Damn it. So close. But yes, we're going to be taping on Valentine's Day. So we'll have to come up with some kind of stupid Valentine's Day crack or special, or better yet, maybe Stephen A.
Who was on crack?
They do say Stephen A. on his new podcast, which is technically not an entity of the ESPN, talks way more about sex than I'm comfortable with.
Oh, my favorite is they will post clips of him talking about fictional characters.
I saw one about Stuart Little of whether he could beat another character. I was laughing hysterically, even though I hate him. Like
they asked him which starting Pokemon he would pick.
And that went viral, that one clip. And I'm like, wait a minute, what is this?
We should just have Stephen A. Smith break down the most ridiculous things because he could break down anything.
That's the next impression we got to get down. You have Jerry Jones. Someone's got to figure out Stephen A. Smith.
Well, it ain't gonna be me, that's for sure. I can't do him justice.
Well, I don't know for other reasons why we couldn't do Stephen A. Smith. I just realized, but yeah, just make sure you check out the live stream on Saturday, February 10th, to be there. Also, since you mentioned baseball season, Hitting for the Cycle is back next week. So make sure you tune into that Pitchers and Catchers report. Ben Cruz, Ryan Tui, the show is back. New intro, Yankees and Red Sox based.
Oh, good.
So a Yankees and a Red Sox fan hosting a podcast together. Go figure.
Is that sticking back with its Friday time slot? It would be back on Friday the 16th.
That's the plan. Yeah. So I think it would be Friday at 5. I think that was where we had it. So get ready for the baseball season, folks. It's around the corner. We'll have our baseball preview at some point. Usually we do. I don't know. When did we do that last year?
We did it, I think, like late March.
Yeah, because
That's when the season usually starts.
I think the season's earlier this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Thursday, March 28th.
Oh, wow, so it's in March. But, all right, we're babbling. But, yeah, just tune in for all that stuff. Again, make sure you follow us on social media at ETB Sports, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram for Empty the Bench, for the Empty the Bench Podcast Network at ETB Network, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at ETB Network. Follow our YouTube channel. Make sure you like and subscribe. YouTube.com/ETB Network, which I think we're at 675 or just about 675 in subscribers. Let's go. We got to get to 1,000. That's the big number we got to get. So make sure you subscribe. Also, all audio platforms, make sure you like and subscribe on there. Spotify, iHeart, Apple Podcasts, Odyssey. Like we're everywhere. So if you don't want to watch the ugliness on this screen, you can go listen to us instead. Like listening to us bicker nonstop, but it would be great for your car ride. So make sure you go do that. And yeah, check out our website. Oh, and I forgot to mention this, so I'll mention this here. ETBpodcast.com for all the latest blogs. Zam Bando, who your co-host for Outsiders, actually did a blog, which we're in the process of uploading, on the ESPN, Warner Brothers Discovery, and the Fox combo streaming deal. So that's going to be up in the next day or so. Make sure you check that out. We have some other blogs coming along the way as well. ETBpodcast.com. Whew. Okay, right. We finished.
For Nick Morgasen, I'm Tom Albano. I can't believe I nearly just did that.
It's okay. Just keep going.
I almost pulled the Kirk Herbstreit.
You want me to say it?
No, I'm tired.
Me too.
For Nick Morgasen, I'm Tom Albano. We'll see you next time for episode 220, the big 220 of Empty the Bench. Take care, everyone.
Good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.